Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming today. Um, so I'm going to start by talking about resilience because as a farm business owner, that's one thing that I have to think about a lot. What happens when things don't go as planned? How do I bounce back? How do I keep systems from breaking down further? How do I stay grounded in all of it and craft a new plan, move forward? And I did some organizing around climate resilience in 2018. And it was interesting to notice that the climate conversation was then and still is often framed as prevention rather than resilience. The thought was if we just stop using so many fossil fuels, we'll prevent climate change and be okay. Mm-hmm. But the science then was saying that the only way to prevent a catastrophic amount of global warming was, they said, an unprecedented, swift transformation of the world's economic system. I don't know about you, but from where I was sitting during the first Trump administration, it wasn't feeling like we were going to have a transformation of the global economic order. So that meant, and it still means, that we are looking at catastrophic climate change in the next decade or so. So the question isn't prevention, the question is resilience. We have to face the effects of climate change, and we have to learn how to survive and to thrive within those effects and despite them. And that means building resilience, collaborating with each other and with the earth at a local scale. That means connecting with community, building local solidarity economies, and ensuring that all our neighbors have access to what they need. An example of that that's very close to my heart is when a community invests in its food producers by buying food from local farms, even when there's cheaper or more convenient food available somewhere else. Those farms, when that happens, those farms are able to build their capacity, and that way, when the bigger scale but less resilient supply chain breaks, local farms can actually be there and will have that capacity to provision what's needed in the community. So I love thinking about resilience because it involves thinking about future challenges through a lens of what can we build that will help us. Building resilience is active and hopeful, and it's on a scale that we can control. It's a step toward being in solidarity with our future selves and with the people after us. So that's kind of my framing of resilience. But a lot of you came today expecting me to talk about Palestine, and I'm excited to share about that too, and about what resilience has to do with it. I spent 5 weeks in Palestine this winter, just got home earlier this month. And most of my time there, I was one of a group of international volunteers providing solidarity accompaniment at Tent of Nations, which is a Palestinian family-owned farm. That experience provided me with a very specific hands-on perspective of the occupation. Tent of Nations is on a hilltop above the village of Nahalin, and every other hilltop surrounding Tent of Nations is occupied by an Israeli settlement. Some of those settlements have been there since the 1980s. And people living in these settlements can get to Jerusalem in half an hour on Israeli roads. And they have electricity and water utilities just like any other suburb. Palestinians, though, are not allowed on Israeli roads. And in Area C, where the farm is, there's no electricity or water grid available to Palestinians. So to get to Bethlehem, which is like 5 kilometers away as the crow flies, you wind through these narrow village roads up and down hills. Sometimes these roads are just across a 20-foot tall chain link fence with razor wire on top. And on the other side, you can see the Israeli highway. So it takes like half an hour to get to Bethlehem, which is 5 or 10 years ago, you could You could just catch a bus there. You could just walk up the road and catch a bus on what is now an Israeli-only road, and you'd be hassled by soldiers if you were to walk that way now. Um, it's a completely apartheid system where that is. So volunteers on the farm take a 30-minute taxi ride from Bethlehem to get to the farm. And once there, we basically just stay there. Stay on the farm all the time, definitely no driving around after dark. The normal thing for Palestinians is to live in a village or town and commute out to your farmland to work. So that's what the family for the farm does. They live in Bethlehem and they commute out to the farm every day. A couple of generations ago, though, the Nasser family made the unusual choice to live on their land. And so they cleaned out space in some caves, limestone caves, and they made level floors and roofs and put on metal doors. And some of the family members were raised on the farm, partially as a way to be in connection with the land. And then these current generation of the family now lives back in Bethlehem, but the whole family still feels really connected to their land, and they spend lots of time on the farm for fun as well as for work. But as settlements were built nearby over the past several decades, Israel attempted to confiscate the Nasser land. And they were surprised when the Nassers produced a deed from the Ottoman Empire. The family, though, is constantly in court working to preserve their ownership of the land and always having to re-register their land. And since settlements have started making incursions onto their land, the settlers have been building a road and laying electricity in a valley that's owned by the Nassers. They've been in court about that as well. And Daoud, the kind of leader of the operation, said that over the past couple of decades, the family has spent $300,000 in court battles. But international presence is one of the most powerful tools that the Nassers have that they found in their quest to keep their land. They've welcomed thousands of international visitors to give these people a firsthand experience of the situation. And since 2002, they've invited international volunteers to come stay on the farm in the caves as a protective presence. So that was my role while I was there, to simply be present on the farm day and night, so that if settlers or military threatened the farm, there would be a witness and a little bit of an international accountability so that violence is less likely. The experience of living on the farm was really, truly lovely. When I came here to speak last time around the winter solstice, I talked about rest as a form of resistance. And I got a really good taste of what life outside of the grind of capitalism can look like while I was at Tent of Nations. It was really nice. There were 7 of us volunteers most of the time when I was there. There were 4 Dutch climate activists in their 60s and 70s. There was 1 German Catholic worker and 1 Australian guy who's Muslim and originally from Fiji. And then there was me, the US American. And each of us had our own cave with electricity and internet when there was enough sun to charge its solar batteries. And some of the caves had windows and some had running water piped in from the cisterns. None of them had heat. There was a shared kitchen with a nice patio where we would make and eat breakfast with ingredients supplied by the family. So pita, hummus, yogurt, oats, a bunch of vegetables, fruit, and eggs from the farm's chickens and ducks. And there was instant coffee, and there was herbs to make tea. And we made a lot of tea. Every day, mid-morning, someone would send out a notification over the volunteer group chat that tea was ready. And then we would Teo would heat up some milk too, just to be extra nice. And we had some packs of biscuits, and we'd all convene on the patio and spend like an hour drinking tea and coffee and just enjoying each other's company. And then we'd go back to work, which while I was there, that meant I prepared a lot of garden beds. There was olive and almond and fig pruning, trellising grapes, and mulching trees. And then we would have lunch, which was usually prepared by one of the Palestinian family members, Amal, one of the Nasser sisters, or Jihan or Katie, her sisters-in-law. And usually there was some combination, just for the foodies out there, some combo of rice and lentils and some stewed or roasted vegetables and a salad and lots of hummus and bread. And someone would also make tea for lunch. Yeah, we would work for a few more hours after lunch, and then we as volunteers, the family would go home before dark, but then we as volunteers would make dinner together, and it felt really fun to make personal connections with people from around the world. And sometimes we'd stay, a few of us would stay back to play cards, but usually we all retired early to our respective caves and crawled under the covers because there was no heat. So we had to use our bodies for that. And I spent my evenings reading and writing and going to sleep early and sometimes joining a Zoom call in the US. I have to say, it's a pretty ideal volunteer gig, and I highly recommend it. It was restful, it was connective and meaningful, and it was obvious why we were there. The week after I arrived on the farm, the nearest settlement, which is within shouting distance of the farm, started construction of a road to a spot that's just over the fence from where our composting toilets were, like 50 feet from where I pooped. And they brought shipping containers full of building materials to this site. By the end of my time on the farm, so a couple weeks, they had trenched in electricity and installed street lights that were turned on at night, which is very provocative and intimidating. But the Nasser family refuses to respond by giving up and leaving, or by violence. They respond by bringing more people from all over the world into the community on their farm, by continuing to make their farm a lovely place in the face of occupation. The existence of Tent of Nations is an expression of resistance. The settlers and military have destroyed trees on the Nasser land. They've sneakily built roads. They've physically attacked family members. And yet, the family is staying on the land, thanks both to their resilience and to the support of internationals. On my first day there and throughout my time in Palestine, I was told that I, as an international, was not the target of the settlers or the military. And in fact, my presence as a white lady with an international passport made everybody safer. I felt that when I was in public in the West Bank. Palestinians were really glad I was there, going through checkpoints with them, seeing what they saw. So back to resilience. Resilience is not a fun thing to have to demonstrate. We would rather just not have the bad thing happen that we have to bounce back from. We'd rather not have climate chaos in the first place. Food hubs, food pantries, vegetable farms in Iowa would rather not have our promised federal funding abruptly taken away. And Palestinians would rather not be dealing with occupation and all of the humiliations and blatant injustices. But we don't get to choose always. We don't get to choose the ease and simplicity that we'd rather have. We're forced to be resilient. And it is truly inspiring to witness a person or a people showing resilience, figuring out how to maintain dignity, how to hold on to values, and find joy, even when faced with challenges, is one of the most powerful things a person can do. And then when human systems like the Israeli occupation create the conditions that require resilience, it's even more enraging and tragic. And it's even more impressive when people are able to make it through with their humanity intact. An interesting side effect of withstanding the occupation is resilience to climate change as well. We didn't know from day to day if the roads to Bethlehem would be open or if the gate would be closed or checkpoints set up So we needed to be able to provision for ourselves on the farm with stockpiles of food for the animals, water in the cisterns, solar batteries charged up. Being at the Tent of Nations was really a beautiful example of what can happen when a group of people focuses on what they can control and do the best that they can within that sphere, despite the uncertainties of the wider world. At Tent of Nations, I had the opportunity to live simply and to be an intimate community with a diverse group of people, to care and be cared for, to have abundant quiet time, and to meet birds and blossoms that were new to me. My time there was supportive of the Nasser family, definitely. It's clear that they wouldn't still be holding on to their land without international presence. But it was also supportive to me to be able to live in a really beautiful way in line with my values, practicing being human. I'm really grateful for it. And I have a Mary Oliver poem for you that I'm going to close with.
Oh, we love Mary.
It's called Don't Hesitate. If you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate. Give into it. There are plenty of lives and whole towns destroyed or about to be. We are not wise and not very often kind, and much can never be redeemed. Still, life has some possibility left. Perhaps this is its way of fighting back, that sometimes something happens better than all the riches or power in the world. It could be anything, but very likely you notice it in the instant when love begins. Anyway, that's often the case. Anyway, whatever it is, don't be afraid of its plenty. Joy is not made to be a crumb.
That's beautiful.
And I'm happy to take questions for as long as you want or whatever.
And maybe you can shout out your question, and Hannah, you can just kind of rephrase it for people on Zoom so they know what you're speaking to.
Definitely.
And
Julie.
Does the Dawood Nasser family, do they grow everything that they need for their own sustenance right on the farm?
The question is, do they grow everything they need for their own sustenance right on the farm? The answer is no. I planted some vegetables while I was there, and when those vegetables are harvested, they'll be used on the farm. But at this point in time, during the winter, we were definitely buying things in, and like bread and stuff. Yeah, we didn't grow wheat. So
I guess what I'm wondering, with all the restrictions and legal complications, how do they manage to survive financially?
honestly, I don't know. They do sell olives, olive oil, I think, and other things. They have some of their bigger crops they sell. But I think a lot of their support honestly comes from the programs that they offer both to Palestinians and to internationals, or that they have offered in the past. COVID really shut that down, and then October 7th really shut that down even more. But I think a lot of their income is from programming. Yeah, Martha.
There's an organization, Friends of Tens of Nations, that many people donate to, and the individual who collects that money is in La Crosse, and
Cool.
I have her connection.
Yeah, so I'll just repeat for the Zoom people. There's an organization called Friends of Tent of Nations, and so they collect donations for the farm as well, and so that's a really important thing. Dawood tries to like minimize the importance of that, but like with $300,000 in court costs, you're gonna need support from something. Yeah.
Hannah, I want to ask you about where you find your inner resiliency and strength to take this pretty big step. I think many of us think, oh, that's beyond what I could do. What if people think I'm this or that, or what could happen to my family or my wealth or my credibility or my well-being? So can you talk about, maybe it goes way deep and way back, or maybe there's people in your sphere right now that make you feel safe enough to take big steps?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have a unique situation as a farmer. I don't have to work in the winter, and yet my farm, still makes income. I also am a farmer with a co-farmer, so she was able to take care of things while I was gone. So I was able to spare those 2 months, which not a lot of people my age can do. So that's one thing that I just had that availability. And yeah, I was definitely supported by the people who connected me with Tent of Nations. Sorry, I have a thing in my throat. Who they said, they like really encouraged me and said, like, for internationals, for white international people, it is really safe there. Like, people haven't been physically harmed largely in the West Bank. I don't know, that might be changing at this point. I feel Tent of Nations itself, though, is very insulated. It's not like Masafar Yatta or Jenin, or definitely not like Gaza. It's just, yeah, it's very, very insulated. And Daoud has said, like, if I thought it was going to be dangerous, I wouldn't have volunteers coming here. So, yeah, having people say, you're gonna be fine is really helpful. And that isn't to say that, like, getting into or out of, especially out of the country, was any fun at all. Lots of questioning. And yeah, and I, like, on my way out, I avoided saying that I had been at Tent of Nations, which meant that I had to kind of make up a story about what I had been doing for 3.5 weeks. And which caused a lot of, like, 6 different people questioning me and getting increasingly agitated and whatever, but it was fine. They let me out, so.
I think would have happened if they knew you were there.
If the, like, worst case scenario is that they would ban me from going back, I would be allowed back into Israel. So, yeah.
Did you tell them you were going there when you came in?
No. No, I definitely didn't. I just was like, I'm going to visit holy places. Yeah, I was. It's true. Yeah.
And what about US customs and that perspective?
That was easy. Getting back, yeah. Well, part of it was that I had flown via France and back through France, and spent a couple days there. So when the US person was like, "Where were you?" I was like, I decided to be honest. I was like, well, I'm coming from France, but I also spent some time in Israel, is what I said. And he was like, "You weren't in Gaza by any chance, were you?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, I have to ask." And then he let me through. Yeah.
Interesting.
But another thing that I'll just say is, like, yeah, I when I was in college, I spent time in Morocco, studying abroad, and I also had been to Palestine with Christian peacemaker teams. And so I had experience in that area, and that also supported me in feeling like, okay, I can go here. I can be okay. Yeah.
Can you speak to your faith and how that helps ground you in resiliency and solidarity?
Yeah, I mean, so my faith is, technically, I'm Christian, I think. I grew up Mennonite, and Mennonites are very community oriented and very anti-nationalist. We believe in building, I mean, yeah, we believe in building our own communities and own systems outside of what a militaristic nation state might say, right? And so that like orients me deeply toward this kind of work, I think. And yeah, and just like being in action, building the world kind of on earth as it is in heaven, right? Trying to build the beloved community, or whatever you might say.
Having been to the Tent of Nations, did you bring back any different perspectives or new ways of being grounded?
Yeah, I don't know that I brought back new ways of being grounded, but I definitely felt the power. So Tent of Nations, the Nasser family is a Christian family. Um, and so which they've like probably been Christian since the beginning of Christianity, right? This is like where Christianity is indigenous, um, and that's really cool to see, like, oh, like this Christianity was born in under empire, like born from people who were under empire, and now the people there are under occupation. And so those teachings, or that form of being Christian, is like so relevant. And so that felt just really powerful to be like, oh yeah, this is what Christianity is. It's about being like fully human and like understanding how to like express love and care for community despite it all, despite the thing that is harming us or pushing us down. So that felt really cool to witness that.
Do you think the fact that they are a Christian family rather than a Muslim family has helped them still be there, or is that not?
That's a good question. So the question is, do I think that the Christian family, them being Christian rather than Muslim, has helped them still be there, etc.? Honestly, I don't think there's much difference in experience between Christians and Muslims in Palestine. It's entirely possible that they're better able to like connect with Christians abroad and get that international support because of a kind of common language. But yeah, I think their experience as Palestinians is not any different. Yeah. Like they are assumed to be terrorists the same way that a Muslim is assumed to be a terrorist. Yeah. Martha.
Can you talk about how the family stays resilient, how they continue on day after day?
Yeah, how the family stays resilient and continues on day after day. I mean, Daher, the oldest brother, he's 68 or something like that. He comes to the farm every day. He's like the main farmer guy. And one of my favorite moments with him was when he came. It was like raining and it was pretty miserable. It was wet and cold, and like we were all, without heat in caves and whatever. And we were huddling under some awning and it was raining. And Dahir was just like, it's raining. Thank God. Like, and then he was like walking around with in his like little sweater in the rain. And so that feeling of like connection to land, connection to the work and the purpose of that was really nice to see. So yeah, that I think definitely keeps the family grounded and resilient, and wanting to keep going. And then Daoud has expressed like how much just having international people, like this network of people rooting for them. Daoud spent 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks, in the Netherlands and Belgium while I was there, talking to the European Parliament, and just trying to keep getting support and keep networking that way. So they're very well networked, and yeah, very expressive of gratitude for that. support.
How many members are there? And what were their ages of the family?
The family, yeah. So the people that I interacted with most in the family were Daoud, who is the kind of ringleader, the charismatic one, the manager type, tells us all what to do, runs around the farm. And his wife is Jihan, and she would come out and cook meals a lot, and she was really cool. And then Daher is the oldest brother, who is 68, as I said. Yeah, Daoud is probably in his 50s. I'm not sure how old he is. And then Amal is in between them in ages, and she's the sister who comes out basically every day to the farm as well, unless she's representing the family in a court case. Yeah. So the Daoud and Daher both have children. And so, yeah, I met a few of them, but yeah, mostly at church is where I met them. So we would go to church in Bethlehem. Yeah.
Does it seem like that next generation is going to keep things going?
Does it seem like the next generation is going to keep things going? That is definitely seems like the hope. Some of that next generation lives in the US or in Germany or something like that. So not all of them are going to be able to be part of that. But yeah, Daoud's son Bishara was on the farm the most often. So hopefully he'll be able to continue some things. Mm-hmm.
We have time for a couple of more questions or reflections.
So when they're trying to push them off the land, are they coming in and offering fair price for the land, or are they just taking?
Both. So when people are trying to push them off the land, are they coming and offering a fair price? Are they just taking it? So the Daoud got a call once from an Israeli, basically offering him a blank check, saying, "What do you want for this land? I'll pay you for it." And he said, "No, it's my land. I'm going to keep it." And so that has happened. And then since then, or before and since then, there have been a lot of incursions on the land. The Israeli military declaring parts of it a closed military zone and destroying trees, this road that was like built at the bottom of a hill that we couldn't actually see from the farm. So they were able to like sneakily build it for a couple weeks before anyone noticed. And then the family members have been attacked, like physically, and beaten by settlers or people paid by the settlers or whatever. So yeah, all kinds of stuff.
I have one more question. Does having been there give a different perspective on land back and the way settler colonizers, our ancestors, have taken land from our indigenous friends and relatives and what land back means? And also, I'll just add that Ellen McDonald on Zoom says, was there beauty in the land?
Oh, yeah. Okay, number one, the land was totally beautiful. It was really cool, hilly stuff, and covered in terraces that were probably, hundreds, if not thousands of years old. So really, really beautiful. And yeah, there were wildflowers while I was there coming up, spring flowers, which is really nice. And yeah, new perspective on land back. Like, yes, definitely. And I think I'm still kind of incorporating what that is. But a few things that I'll say is like, one is that, it's really because of the apartheid system in Israel, there's not like most Palestinians, the only Israelis they meet are soldiers. And most Israelis are able to live life without meeting Palestinians. And so there's no way for people to understand each other as human. And that's really challenging, because then a lot of Israelis live their lives the way that we live our lives without thinking that they're on native land most of the time. And yeah, and so a lot of these settlements, like obviously there are people in the settlements who are actively expanding and know that there are Palestinians holding this land who don't want to give it up. But a lot of the other people living in those same settlements don't even know that they're in the West Bank.
Wow.
Like, they just know that they drive to Jerusalem, to get to work or whatever. And yeah, so that's really wild. And that has made me think a lot about, like, okay, what am I oblivious to in my life? And like, what is the way to like help people see a bigger picture, or like see that they're part of a system that they don't want to be part of, and then what are the ways out of that system? So it's a big question, and it's like for us as much as it is for Israelis. Yeah.
I have a last question.
Sure.
And it goes back to how you introduced your topic, talking about resiliency for where we're at with climate, and also about our economic and what you're talking about with the West Bank. All of it together reminds me of a book by I think it's a sacred thing, dystopian, futuristic, and it's groups of people who are now living that life where the economic system is more like what you're talking about with the tent city. And our region here, the Driftless region, has so many opportunities with our organic farms and our things like that. Do you see the potential for us here building into that more and building our system away from our economic system?
Yeah. Yeah, I love thinking about, like, what could our lives look like if we weren't like so like stuck within this system. And it does feel like as the system crumbles, as federal workers lose their jobs, as all of this stuff is happening, we really have the opportunity to think about, like, what does it look like to keep everyone cared for, outside of like relying on the powers that be. And that's really hard, and we're not used to we're not used to like building, like doing like work outside of a job often, and there's a lot of like work and like thinking that has to happen in order to like really build systems. But there's also just like showing up and participation and like figuring it out as we go. And I think we are going to have more and more of that, people realizing that, hey, I can show up, I can participate, I can try to figure this out, because this old way isn't working at all. So yeah, I don't know. I'm excited about it.